and taking our children to pride parades. And you know what I mean? We've been there, we've been loving, and we show support to the people there. But at the same time, we explain our views on the matter, that we believe marriage is between a man and a woman.
If you can't talk about God in the classroom, why can we talk about every gender under the sun, right?
Okay, first off, I have no idea what school he's going to. But God,
okay, for a parent to see me and go, not around my kid. No, I don't think that's okay. I feel like that's really crossing the line because
Hey, thank you for watching Power to the Pod, where we're committed to an intellectual integrity and a moral honesty. I'm your host, Superior, and once again, thank you for watching. Now, in this video, we're going to watch a debate by Vice. You know what I'm saying? Like, normally I'm not really intrigued in these sort of debates, but this one here is actually, I think, a informative one that actually I think gets down to the moral and the root cause of, it seems like, a lot of parents' issues. And this is conservatives debates liberals on the U.S. education system. Now, it may seem obvious to a lot of people on a surface level. Answer is all schools, either public or private schools, just need to be funded. We all understand that education to our kids is important, and I would want my kids to have the best possibilities when it comes to a wide variety of education. And, you know, to which is on, if you want a public school, private, homeschool, it's your choice. But it is really interesting on why these sort of choices are made, and it's a little surprising. So let's go ahead and get into the video and let's have that conversation.
SATs.
No, wait. We gotta be careful.
I'm Mina Durson. I'm a correspondent here at Vice News, and we're gonna talk about education today. We tried to bring a very diverse mix of voices here. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to represent every single opinion out there when it comes to education, but we are really thankful for your time and for your perspectives. I also have 2 kids in school, so, you know, have experienced some of this from the parent side as well. So let's just start really broadly. What's the purpose of education?
I think the purpose of education is twofold. One, to help build and support the individual, but also help build and support society as a whole. Because even though you may not have a kid in education, you pay taxes to public school, because we as a society depend on and need education for society to work.
Okay, I think that was a beautiful answer. It's very few people who would disagree with that. And if you do disagree with that, then like you're one of the weirdos that just, you know, thinks the rich should only get education and the poor and the ones who can't do it should just stay uneducated, you know, something like that.
I think the purpose of education is to educate and not indoctrinate. And I think that in a lot of ways we've strayed from that in the original purpose of what it's supposed to be.
I think it should be intelligence and character. I think you should be able to understand the world around you and understand who you are and your purpose and try to make the world a better place. I think that it has to be a mix of the skills, you know, memorizing the formulas, you know, understanding the world around you, but then also what to do with it.
And just to go off that, the idea that education, you have to balance the importance of memorizing the quadratic formula while simultaneously addressing social and political issues respectively. So children have both the know-how, general knowledge, and also kind of self-awareness and character so they're able to develop their own opinions.
Yeah, I think that the purpose of education is to understand the world.
My kind of outlook on how this
general knowledge
conversation is gonna go is usually the younger ones. These two here, I think, is going to be more so of the arguments that we see on the internet. And just I mean, I don't judge a book by its cover, but just looking at this young man, he's going to be that guy, that kid. You know what I'm saying? And I hate to be that one. But obviously, we have 2 you know, LGBTQ members in the group just right here, so that I'm pretty sure is going to steer towards that way probably quicker than what we probably would guess. So
Of education is to understand the world that you exist in and use that understanding as a means for creating change or even understanding yourself on a deeper level.
I believe the purpose is simply just to prepare the individual to be successful in the society that they exist in.
Critical thinking, learn how to live out your full potential so you can be independent, and everything else really flows from there.
The purpose of education is to prepare children for the real life and also make sure that they are literate.
So I think the purpose is to raise the next generation of leaders. And when you think about what you want your leaders to be like, you want them to be knowledgeable, and you want them to be compassionate, you want them to be self-aware, you want them to understand the best way to move forward, not just for themselves personally, but for their whole community.
When we talk about who's doing the educating, who should decide what's being taught?
Parents. I think that parents should have a huge say in what's going on in the classroom because it's their kids, not ours. As a public school teacher 15 years, I was always aware that these are not my children. We have to make sure that we're respecting parents and their beliefs and their values.
I think the Constitution agrees with that.
Yes.
Here in America, ranging back to the early 1900s, plenty of Supreme Court cases have ruled in that favor that it is the parents' right ultimately to decide a child's education, medical needs, etc.
I would push back though and say that there does need to be collaboration, right? I completely respect your idea of it is not our job as educators to put forth a belief in front of children, right? That includes not perpetuating parents' beliefs in the classroom as well. In my opinion, that would be keeping a non-biased viewpoint, simply presenting issues, and then allowing kids to decide for themselves.
I would agree.
I think that's probably one of the best mixes. One, these are paid professionals. I mean, low paid professionals, but nevertheless, they go to school. They have a passion to do this. Let them teach. That's what they're there for. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, if a parent is sending their kids, which is probably one of the most valuable, things that they hold dear to their heart, they want to make sure their kids are safe, by any means necessary. So I do kind of understand that it should be a collaboration of parents making sure that their kids are getting educated, but not indoctrinated or brainwashed into believing one thing or another. And at the same time, teachers need to be able to do what they are created to do, and that's to educate, teach, make awareness, give options of different viewpoints and perspectives. That's important too. So, I mean, yeah, pretty solid answer.
That I think it needs to be a collaborative effort. The way that we decide curriculum in Texas is that work groups comprised of community members, educators, parents, even in some cases students and public service officials come together to draft curriculum plans, and then it's ultimately decided on by our State Board of Education, which has a lot of kind of assistance from parents as well. So I think that kind of format can be really effective because it also empowers students to become involved in the fate of their education. And as a student myself, I think that that's incredibly important because our perspectives need to be heard as well.
The voices of parents need to be heard in that equation. But unfortunately, what we've seen recently is that parents' voices have been demonized in this process. You've seen parents who've criticized local school boards labeled terrorists simply for caring about the quality of their education that their child is receiving. These teachers are temporary caretakers. When they come back home, it's the parent who has to explain that this is this radical belief that was put in front of you. This was this idea that you've never been raised around that parent now has to explain. And at the end of the day, that isn't just confined to a classroom. Now it's bleeding into their upbringing. And there's only one person responsible for their upbringing, and that's the parents. It's not the educator, it's not the teacher, it's their parents.
Okay, so gotta interject right there. So I homeschool my kids. Well, my wife does, so I go out there and I make the money. But nevertheless, even during homeschooling, it will be the same, viewpoint. Regardless if you homeschool your kids, private school or public schools, a parent should still teach their kids about life in general. It doesn't have to be necessarily, math and science and English. Like, if you can, go for it. But when it comes to, if your kids come home with a question regarding this, that, and the third, politics or, religion or or sexuality, like, you're their parents. You're supposed to do that. If the teachers are not doing that and you're not doing that, they're going to learn that from somebody. So I would still encourage parents to still be active and vocal in their kids' life, because they're going to get that information from somewhere. And if your kids are responsible enough to bring that to you, answer their questions. How you answer it is a whole different conversation. But still, I don't know what this young man is thinking. Like, you know, like, it's a weird thing. Like, oh, now parents have to actually talk to their kids about what they're learning in school. Like, maybe that should be a thing. You know, like, that's, you know, parents are supposed to be parents.
I like the idea of the collaboration, and obviously parents' voices belong at that table. I also like the emphasis on students having a say in this, and also other people adults that aren't parents. I'm invested in that too, even though I don't have children of my own. And I hear what you're saying about having to, like, parents needing to confront or address, I guess, like, what kids are learning at school. But giving kids the exposure to other ideas or other things that they wouldn't be exposed to otherwise is, I think, part of what's going to help raise the next generation of people that are able to look outside their own lived experience.
But I think that oftentimes those different ideas are presented in the classroom as a student as the only idea. When you're being taught that, oh, there's this many genders or anything like this, where you haven't been exposed to that in your own household, it's being presented as like the end all be all when it actually isn't. It's about educating and not indoctrinating. As long as that is presented as a counterpoint to, well, there's people who believe this, but there's also people who believe this, that's okay. The reality of it is that in most classrooms across the country, that isn't what's happening.
Okay, so now we're talking about the individual's responsibility when teaching a class. I didn't question every single teacher across America. So it's a little weird to just broadly say that, you know, this is happening across America, because stats show differently. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to indoctrinating our kids, that can go across the board. And for whatever reason, he wanted to go straight into the sexual identification side of it. And it could be religion, it could be politics. If you're going to nitpick and not want one thing, if you don't want your kids learning about sexuality, which I'm all for it, don't teach it. You know what I'm saying? Especially until they get to like high school, go for it, you know. But also have that same energy when it comes to religion. I don't care if you're Christian. I don't care if we all believe that this is a Christian nation. Don't teach it. Because then what about Muslims? What about atheists? What about Buddhists? What about Jewish beliefs? It's so many different beliefs out there. We can't just pick and choose. One is to be talked about in school. When it comes to politics, keep it all out of school. You know what I'm saying? Don't have books about it. But then you run into, which they're going to talk about later on, is eventually that's going to have to be talked about. And it's how that is talked about, which goes back to the individual responsibility of that teacher. You just got to weed out the bad ones.
To piggyback off of that, one side is labeled as a bigot, white supremacist, homophobic. There's a lot of parents in America that are Christian, or, you know, they believe in two genders, gender binary. And if you say that as a teacher, especially, you could be labeled as homophobic. So there isn't this unbiased classroom, because there's one side that can't really be, as loud as the other side without risk of, losing our jobs even.
But you two are kind of the ones that brought in the conflict of, like, there is an indoctrination going on and only one side it has this opinion and this side is not allowed to talk and we have to be quiet. When really you guys are actually the loudest in regards to this issue thus far, right?
Right now, yes,
so,
in
yeah,
this room, yes.
I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the quiet. What I would say, though, is, like, I do want to push away, if possible, but I'd love for you to hear this, right, is that idea of someone sees me and they go, oh, you're one of those that teach that there's 72 different types types of gender. Desmond Fambrini, he, him, gender fluid, bisexual. My students do not know this because it doesn't come up because I'm a learning specialist and it's my job to educate and teach a curriculum, right? Now, if I'm asked directly by a parent or if there's confusion, oh, why do you wear makeup? Same reason why girls do, because it's fun for me. It doesn't need to be this very controversial, I'm gonna mess with this child's upbringing, they're gonna go home and they're gonna turn into a gender fluid and they're gonna think there's 72 genders.
I think that's a question you say.
Okay, so what is the problem with what she said? I know I'm a teacher. I didn't catch what she said that she was teaching, but you know, for the sake of this conversation, she's a math teacher. That has nothing to do with her sexuality. That has nothing to do with her life choices. But if someone asks her, why are you wearing makeup? Can she answer that question? Does she just pretend as if the person didn't ask and just ignore them? Like, they seem to understand that this is what I'm being paid to teach. I'm going to teach it. I'm not going to somehow mix in my personal lifestyle into my math homework. And once again, if teachers are doing that, then that is not the proper place or time to do that. And then correction, and that should be dealt with, obviously. But if they have that kind of attitude, then what is the problem? We will find out.
So you should go ask your parents about how they feel about that.
Well, so,
And
okay.
teachers are supposed to teach reading, math, science, the things that are actually going to make them contributing members of society. Answering a child's questions about whether or not men or women should be wearing makeup or not is, I don't think, within that realm.
Okay, so you said science, right? And so we're talking about a physical science. We're talking.
But that just goes to my question is, but what if a child does ask that question? What if a 13-year-old, 14-year-old asks the teacher, you're a boy, why are you wearing makeup? How do you answer? How do you expect them to answer that? That's what I wish they would have asked the young man is, how would you answer that?
Talking about human anatomy and biology here. So a child says, I thought boys could not wear makeup. I have an X and Y chromosome and I'm wearing makeup. I could factually answer that without indoctrinating with any opinion.
But it's in no way scientific, your answer to that question.
How is that not scientific?
I would say maybe cultural or it's a perception or an opinion, but it's in no way scientific.
Anyone else? I am a chatty person, so I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to let's see if anyone else has something to say.
So I just had one question for you, because not all homes are welcoming or open to conversation or safe. So how do we balance that?
I think that what we're saying is that there are certain conversations that are not to be had with a teacher. And I think that the argument that a lot of people on the right and conservatives are making is that we just don't feel as if actors of the state should be having conversations that are taxpayer-funded conversations with children about conversations that have not come up in their own households. And to that point, if you can't talk about God in the classroom, why can we talk about every gender under the sun, right?
Okay, first off, I have no idea what school he's going to, but God is talked about all the time. When I was going to school, it was never like a censorship of teachers feeling like they can't talk about God. We sang the Pledge of Allegiance, United States of America, to the Republic for which it stands, one nation under God. Like, that was a common thing. So what is he talking about? And two, it feels like he is kind of reflecting a little bit. Maybe he hasn't gotten that kind of information from his parents or that talking to from his loved ones. Like I said, parents should already be doing that. A parent shouldn't be trying to interject only when they learn something or hear something from school. This should just be an everyday thing as they grow up. Why is he making it seem like, you got to ask permission of the parents if we could talk about this? Like, you should already be prepping your kids for these type of situations so they're not surprised by it, or you can kind of develop their own kind of sense of awareness in their own feelings before they get out into the public. Like I don't understand his viewpoint on that. Like
I think that's the conundrum that we find ourselves in. If we are banning those conversations, we've banned those a long time ago, then how can we have these conversations just because they belong to a different side of the political aisle?
So I think we actually talk about God in the classroom all the time, right?
Yeah.
Who's taught religion? Who's taught world religions? Who's taught like history in the way that, you know, Puritans, and that's okay, because God is part of the fabric of history and whatever else.
We talk about it from a development perspective. This is how Christianity originated. This is how Islam originated.
I understand.
We don't talk about like, this is what this gender is, and this is if you feel this way, then there's gender affirmation therapy, all those things.
I think you actually bring up a really good parallel of like, I feel comfortable and I feel like it is okay to talk about identity issues the same way we talk about God. Not indoctrinating anyone, not telling this is what you have to be or you have to believe, but saying this is something that some people believe.
But in the sense of gender identity, I don't see that parallel. How is that making someone more literate, more successful?
What I hear you saying is that learning about different gender identities does not make somebody a more considerate, well-rounded person, but learning about different religions does make you a more considerate, well-rounded.
I'm saying that is a part of history. I don't understand where gender identity falls within what we should be teaching.
Religious history and God comes into play in terms of history, cool. But don't gay people and trans people too? It's not like I'm the first transgender person to ever walk this earth. Like there are trans people that were, and gay people who were part of major movements in this country, like from the civil rights movement to the feminist movement to, I mean, obviously Stonewall. Like, isn't that part of history?
Bars. One person who fits that description best, James Baldwin. If you don't know who James Baldwin, first off, I'm gonna pray for you. I'm deeply, especially if you a black person and you don't know who James Baldwin is, you need to definitely turn this video off, do some soul searching. In recent books, okay, James Baldwin is probably one of the greatest writers in the past, 10 decades for sure. And he was gay. I didn't know he was gay until I read like half of his book. I just picked it up because one of his book titles is "I'm Not Your Negro," and he said with the hard R, and I was like, "Dang, this seems pretty powerful." I picked up his book, "The Fire Next Time," read halfway through, didn't know he was gay. I was like, "This dude is spitting facts. This dude is spitting knowledge." I'm taking notes and everything, and then realize, wait. I think he's gay. I think he's gay because he started talking about, relationship, with guys. I'm like, oh, this dude is gay. But then, I mean, my natural instinct, because, that's just kind of how I was programmed, was he's wrong. Wait, I can't listen to a gay, like, but then I start thinking like, but just, 4 or 5 chapters ago, I was digging it. You know what I'm saying? So we need to learn how to come into agreements. And just because somebody is gay doesn't mean that they're an evil, wrong, out to get you type of person. Now, spiritually, if you ask me as a God-fearing man, that's a different question. And we can have that conversation. But I am not going to refuse to learn something if possible. If you got anything to teach me, I'm going to learn. I'm going to take some notes, but I'm not going to because you're gay, now I don't want to hear anything you have to say. To me, that's just a little ignorance.
3, 2.
Let's just take a step back. So just show of hands. Who here thinks public school is the best option for kids?
Damn.
Okay. And who thinks private school is the best option for kids? Who thinks homeschool is the best option for kids? And then some of you guys didn't raise your hands at all.
It's so challenging to pick one right answer for that, because essentially what you're asking is, who do you trust the most with your children? Who do you trust to give them the cultural values that I have and then fill in the gaps where I don't necessarily know the answer, but I trust that they're experts and are going to give my children the attention that they need in order to develop so that they can be a better version of themselves?
If I had to choose one, it's public school. It is the best tool we have to give everybody a chance at a good education, no matter where you come from, how much money you have. Public schools, where not everybody thinks the same and people are coming from all walks of life, is a good like microcosm of that global experience, where you can learn critical thinking skills and learn how to be a good community member, because not everybody looks like you or thinks like you.
Kali, you were shaking your head.
Oh, well, first of all, our schools are more segregated ever than our public schools, especially in blue states. New York and California have the most segregated schools. And on top of that, we are in a place where our...
So, I mean, that's not a good thing, right? So maybe we should like kind of fix that.
Public schools are not safe. Especially the last 20 years. And I just don't see why sending our kids to these environments where it's unsafe. We also used to be, because I used to be on the left, we used to be against the institutionalization of our children. These kids are being institutionalized. Having these places where there's 2,000, 3,000 kids. I'm okay with public school, but the problem with it is that it's become an environment where it's almost like the school to prison pipeline. We used to talk about that in the 90s. We're not talking about that anymore. And I think that's something that parents need to wake up about and America needs to wake up about.
So, okay, so to answer her question now, it was weird because I don't understand why she had to point out, okay, these blue states, you know, are more segregated in schools. And it's like, okay, maybe we should fix that, even if it is a blue state. I don't know. And then she's talking about schools not being safe. Well, that's a whole different conversation when it comes to maybe guns. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that I don't know why she's bringing that up, which has nothing to do with the question at hand. Schools need to be safe. That's a gun problem. Overcrowding in schools, that's a funding problem. Why schools are segregated is probably a money issue. Not everybody has the money or the funding to send their kids across districts. Poor people who don't have that type of money or transportation just has to go to the school up the street. You don't have a choice. And that's hundreds of people. So when we're talking about segregation, that is how our history was kind of brought up. Maybe we should fix that. But I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Institutionalization of our children.
I talk about the school to prison pipeline all day, every day. And I hear what you're saying, that it's terrible that there are parents who are sending their kids to schools that are not safe. However, what about the parents that don't have a choice? Like, I'm thinking about the most marginalized community when I said public schools here, because I agree with you, the public schools have a lot of work to do to become the safe places where our kids are not in institutions where they're ignored or not giving the services they need. And also, for the people that don't have a choice and that is the only option their kids have, I just believe that's worth fighting for. That's why I said
absolutely. I'm a big advocate for school choice.
Well, why don't we just show of hands? Who believes in school choice?
Can you just specify like what do you mean by that?
So that's where parents can apply the money that they pay to taxes. They get vouchers and they can put that into any school that they want. It's very popular in red states right now, and a lot of blue states are against it, especially teachers' unions are against it because it's taking money away from the public schools and creating more of a competitive market.
Right. That's why I wouldn't raise my hand.
Sometimes with school choice, it gets a little bit tricky, right? I had my first class the first day I had 25 students. By day 2, I had 19 because 6 parents switched out of the class because they saw me and they were like, "There's no freaking way," before I even got a word in.
As a parent, I would want to know, like, do you not think that is okay or they're right to withdraw when they see you? Because ultimately, you're probably an excellent educator.
I appreciate that.
I have no doubt about that. But I think we get into muddy waters when we start trying to take that choice away from the parent.
Do I think that it is okay for a parent to see me and go, "Not around my kid"? No, I don't think that's okay. I feel like that's really crossing the line because you are, for lack of better words, discriminating against me openly. That's like seeing a black teacher and being like, "There's no way." It is this.
I guarantee the black people on that panel would trip the hell out if someone was like, yeah, if it was a white guy talking, yeah, I went into my school and I seen that their history teacher was a black guy, and I was like, not around my kids. Not around my kids. I don't want my kids being taught by that black person. Everybody would be tripping out. But no, when it's a gay person who which is weird. Like, I don't know how you can just openly just kind of weirdly contradict yourself in the same sentence. He said, I'm pretty sure you're a very amazing teacher, very well educated, but just looking at you, I don't want you around my kids. Like, but what if, she went, 25-year degree, got this and this accolade and bam, bam. But just because they're gay and you're, of course, this is where Republicans kind of brainwash a lot of people in thinking you're gay, so you're going to want to groom my kids. Like, it's just something that you have to do because you're gay. And when you're gay, you're, hypersexual and you just want to indoctrinate every single little kid that you like. Come on, man. Like, can people pretend to be at least a little bit smarter than that? Like, come on.
Same. It is the same.
It's
Not
still
quite.
the right of the parent to make that decision as to whether or not they want their child to learn from you.
Okay.
Like, it's still that parent's right. Like, you can disagree with their motivations, their motives, their ideas,
Would you
but
say
it is
that-
still their child.
This started around school choice. Even if you
I
want,
wish somebody would have asked them, well, can our parents just openly withdraw their students from a history class or any class and just openly say, because the teacher is black? And let's see how I just wish that they would just ask that. And I want him to be like, yeah, because discrimination is awesome. Come on, that's such a slippery slope. Maybe we're going to find ourselves in the 50s and 40s real quick.
want to decide on a different learning environment for your kid, the people that do not have the option to send their child to a different place, the bar should not be so low. And that's my concern with school choice, is that sometimes people think that if everyone flees to the suburbs, who is teaching in these schools where everyone has decided they don't want their tax dollars going to? And that's one of the big
There you
concerns.
go.
With funding of education being the way that it's set up, it essentially makes it so that the people that are stuck with these as their options don't end up with as good a school. And everyone deserves to have their kid go to a good school.
And that's exactly the problem with impoverished areas. Education. Schools are not funded. So when schools are not funded, there's no opportunities as other schools in the suburbs. Do you understand how that works? So I don't know, man. It just feels like it's such a basic understanding. It just feels weird having to explain this, because then it feels like I'm talking to, like, my youngest daughter, my 8-year-old, like really basic things that as an adult you should kind of have a pretty good grasp of. But I find myself having to explain this to people, and it makes me feel dumb. I have to, like, how when parents or mom have to kind of chew the food a little bit and then give it to their, like, I have to spoon feed people, and I feel ridiculous having to do that. But I don't know. It's 2023.
Well, if there's school choice, they won't be stuck with those options. They can have other options. That's the whole point of that. Also, if there's choice, they won't be stuck with those.
And everyone deserves to have their kid go to a good school.
Well, if there's school choice, they won't be stuck with those options. They can have other options. That's the whole point of that. Also, it is the
but what? Oh, Jesus. The good school is 30, 40, 50 miles away. How? Not every parent has the means to make that happen, especially if they're working 50, 60 hours a week. That doesn't solve the underlining. That helps middle class and rich folks. They could do that. But once again, people just think about themselves and forget about everybody who can't do that. Or they have such a warped reality or a warped perspective of how people operate. Not everybody has the same means as you do. So it may work for you, but what about people who don't have vehicles? They rely, a lot of parents take the transportation, public transportation. How is that going to work? Come on. I mean, once again, basic stuff. I got to explain it like you're a 4-year-old, and you're still probably not going to catch on to that because it's 2023. Jesus.
School district's job to appropriately use those budgets. Most of the budget in the schools aren't going to the teachers. We got cafeteria workers, janitors, all of these people that are getting paid.
It used to be 9 out of...
Wait, what? Hold on.
We got cafeteria workers, janitors, all of these people.
We have cafeteria and janitors getting paid. Oh my God, what is going on? Look, okay, so this is what happens when you find yourself in a corner and you have to rebuttal something. You can't just be like, you know what? You're right. That's a good point. You find yourself in a corner and you have to say something, even if it's the most ridiculous, idiotic, ignorant ish you can think of. You just have to say it so you don't look insecure. You don't look like you don't know anything. So you're just going, oh, why are we paying cafeteria ladies? Like, they can just like not eat at school. And janitors, why bother cleaning? They're not even going to be there all day. Why do we need to clean? Like, Jesus Christ.
People that are getting paid.
It used to be 9 out of 10 people that were employees of schools and districts were teachers. Now it's 50-50.
Yes.
So there is some mismanagement of funds in this country. We actually fund our kids really well. Yeah.
Okay. So I pulled up this information here, and hopefully while I'm editing, I can kind of post that right here. But it says schools and districts that serve large portions of poor students have historically been shortchanged when it comes to things like access to high quality teachers, advanced courses offerings, early education programs, and school counselors. Resources that are directly linked to the amount of funding available. Obviously, what does she mean that, schools are just mismanaging their money? Like, some of these schools don't have enough money to mismanage. Like, the school that Brett Favre wanted to steal money from welfare programs and just give millions of dollars for a volleyball court. That is mismanaging to me, in my opinion. Like, $1 million for a volleyball, it can't even be football or basketball. Volleyball? But we want to nitpick and say that these schools that are lacking funds, they're just mismanaging their money. That's what it is. Because we have too many janitors. We have too many cafeteria ladies. Like, do something better. You just need like 4 or 5 teachers. Okay? That's it. Have 50, 60 students in the classroom and make it work. Like, I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Too many administrators.
Just to go back a little bit to like when you guys are raising your hands about the different choices, you raised your hand for homeschooling. Can you talk us through like why do you think homeschooling is the best option?
Well, if we look at the history of this country, a lot of people were homeschooled. A lot of our founders were homeschooled. Like they only went to school till 3rd grade, a lot of them. And I think what has happened is parents have decided that the government is going to do a better job at raising their children than themselves. We have also come to a place where school is taking up the majority of our day. And we have this mistrust of parents that they can't educate their own children. And I think that that's wrong. I think that a lot of parents, and if you look at homeschool data, like my friend Phil right here, he's got 7 kids and he's homeschooling them all. And actually homeschool kids are turning out really well.
I think you bring up a lot of very valid points, but I have to say,
I'm not gonna even respond. That So much.
Want your opinion on this? I would never homeschool my own kids, and I want my kids to be smarter than me, than I ever was. How am I going to have a child that is smarter and does better than I do if I'm their only teacher?
You grow alongside your child.
Okay.
I think as a teacher, I feel like I've learned the most in my life as a teacher, like more so than in college. And, you know, so parents becoming teachers is actually good for them as well.
Okay, so how do you, well, once again, like these people just have these conversations in their bubble, and they think about their friends, they think about their coworkers, they think about people that they associate themselves with on a day-to-day basis. And they're like, and she's like, well, if Betty can homeschool and I can homeschool, like everybody can. You know, she says she's been a teacher for 15 years. Obviously you can homeschool. Obviously. But what about the parents that didn't get a high school diploma, didn't graduate, and if they did, they barely did that? How do you expect for them to teach something that they couldn't accomplish themselves? That's why public schools are more beneficial for some people. I mean, I don't want to keep saying this word, but obviously that's how that works. Not everybody has the means or the understanding or the patience or the reasoning and the something in them that they can explain and break down for kids, especially young kids. My wife homeschools. She has the most patience and the most creative way to explain to our kids on reading and math and science and English and all this. That takes a whole different type of person. If I had to do that, I would be struggling because I don't have the patience, one. You know what I'm saying? So if parents don't have that, they need other options. But if they can't do it, in the public schools that they're sending their kids to are underfunded and is probably doing just as good a job as they can, then what's the point? What is the point? Oh, man.
And even in the public schools, a lot of teachers are relying on the lesson plans. But speaking from experience, I got to give the credit where it's due. My wife does the homeschooling, and I've watched that process of her learning alongside, you know, to make sure when they ask these questions, I'm getting knowledge on the material as well so I can help you get through it. Nothing replaces that value, that bonding time that she gets to have with the kids.
I taught high school for 6 years, and I quit. And I'm a stay-at-home mom with my own kids. So we're a one-income family. We're lucky enough to be able to live off of my husband's salary. Would you say that most homeschool families have one parent working?
I do think the statistics show that that is the case.
It's like the only way to do it well.
Pretty much. And, you know, another misconception, though, is that they think it's a matter of income and homeschool families have to be rich and et cetera. And I think the average homeschool family makes like $65K. So the reality is they're scaling back and making sacrifices.
Okay, so they're scaling. Okay, so first off, let's go ahead and tackle that. If that is true, which, you know, whatever I pulled up says something totally different. You're making $65,000 a year, and you live in Colorado, which is not California, not New York, but it's not a Nebraska, it's not a Ohio. Okay, if you're making $65,000 a year and you're homeschooling and you have to scale back from that, you are not going to make it. You're not either going to be able to put food on your table, gas in your car, pay your rent. You're not going to be able to do that because the price of living in Colorado is ridiculous. $65,000 and then scaling back from that is not going to work. What I have put up here says 1 in 3 homeschooling households has an annual income over $100,000. With $100,000, yes, go ahead and homeschool. If that's one parent bringing in an income of $100,000, go for it. But the average income, I believe, of a regular household family is like between 40 and 50, you do not have the time to homeschool. 9 times out of 10, you need both parents working. Take away that income out of the household, a lot of families are not going to make it. That's not even an option for them. So he just made it seem like, well, you just got to scale back on some things. Like, instead of eating 3 meals a day, just like cut it down to 1. Like, eat a big lunch to where when you wake up, you're hungry as hell. And then lunchtime, boom, eat. And then you eat so much, you're not even hungry for dinner. Like, come on, just scale back.
Sacrifices for this lifestyle because they value what is coming out of it.
So let's just say that for the people that homeschool isn't an option, what is for so many people it's not. I do not think that school choice is the way to go about that, which I know is a lot of people's answer to that.
Can we just get Sean in here? What are your thoughts on this?
School choice gives people an exit ramp. You get to send your kid to a school that best fits what you think is best for their development. At the end of the day, it's kitchen table conversations about, we've worked hard to raise a family. We want to spend our money in a way that best fits our child, best fits our family. And when you don't have school choice, you do make those trade-offs. There are real consequences there.
The school is considered one of those shared spaces, one of those last kind of shared spaces where you might bump into someone who maybe comes from a different background than you, has a different ideology than you. What do you lose if you homeschool and then you're not putting yourself in these kind of situations?
What you lose is negative influences. One of the biggest things I think when it comes to homeschool is keeping my kids away from your bad kids. We've went and taken our children to pride parades. And you know what I mean? We've been there, we've been loving, and we show support to the people there. But at the same time, we explain our views on the matter that we believe marriage is between a man and a woman. And from experience, and talking to people, I understand that a lot of people who choose that lifestyle, it is based on trauma. A lot of were molested or sexually assaulted as children. So I don't think it's okay for me to teach to my children that this is something normal we ought to accept when it doesn't progress society. We would not be able to procreate if everybody were to choose that lifestyle. So I think...
Oh, shoot. Okay, whoa. Okay, so I thought he was going to go a totally different direction. I thought he was going to say, I want to keep my kids away from the bad kids who are bad influences, gangs, peer pressure, bullying, just running around with the wrong crowd. And old boy just went left with it. Like, he was like, yeah, keep my kids away from the bad kids. We went to a gay parade, which is weird. Why would he take his kids to a gay parade, but then proceed to say, hey, they're like bad, kind of. They're bad. Like, they have some trauma. Like, they're celebrating and we're celebrating with them, but they have some sort of trauma. And it's like, okay, that's kind of weird. I don't know how he married those two right there, but he did. Oh boy, did a good job.
It's okay for me as a parent to say, hey, this exists, that exists, but this is our view on it, and this is how we want to present it to them.
Do you think it's somewhat problematic that you're going like, well, this is our viewpoint, that marriage is between a man and a woman because we can't move society forward with gay couples? Like, we have factually proven that incorrect. I can literally...
Okay, wow. Oh, shoot. Okay, so first off, I do agree with this guy. Okay, teach your kids what you want to teach them. You can teach them your values, your morals, your understanding, your knowledge. Okay, cool. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. But one weird thing is, okay, I teach my kids there's people who want to marry, there's guys who want to marry another guy. There's women who want to marry other women. They can do that. But we have a different understanding. We are God-fearing people. This is what our belief says about this. But we still love these people. Do not be disrespectful. Do not demonize these people. They just have different ideas than you. They just have different beliefs and morals and understanding than you. Why would you why make it seem like it's like a battle of survival? If in the US, 10% of adults are now married to same-sex spouses. 10%. It's like 331 million people in America, and you're worried about 10%? There's plenty of people. There's plenty of opposite genders for your kids to procreate with. We're not running out. It is not a shortage of people to procreate with. Why are we making it seem like it's in such a future to where like you have to like go to the black market to find somebody to create kids with? It is not that type of situation. Calm down. Come on.
Really, I can actually tell you that gay parents, on average, make exceptional parents and do exceptional things with kids because they adopt, and they only adopt kids when they are financially capable, which actually makes kids of gay parents actually more successful and academically competent. So gay parents actually are very good at moving society forward, and we have the statistics to prove
Could
it.
that be a long-term solution, though, if a large population chose to choose that lifestyle? There would be no children to adopt.
What? Okay, in your hypothetical world scenario, then yeah, if only 10% of the world was straight, then yeah, let's have that conversation. Let's really start to try to figure out and kind of like come together and just try to populate the whole world, because 90% of the world is in gay relationships and no one's having kids. Then yeah, that is a cause for concern, obviously. But I mean, we could say aliens is mutants and they're scrolls, and then in 2 weeks they're gonna just transform and kill everybody. What do we do then? Like, okay, I hope you get what I'm saying. Anything can happen in a made-up scenario, but that's not what's happening now. You can have kids. Your kids is going to grow up straight and have kids. Why are we so focused on 10% of the population, and there's 90% of people who are really ready and willing to have kids? Let it go. It's okay.
No one is choosing this lifestyle.
That's an opinion.
Okay,
It's not an opinion. It's just.
Okay, sorry.
Did you choose to be straight, sir?
I've been teaching for 15 years.
So
and
have I.
will say that there is some kids now that are going for that community that are doing it not out of a genuine, and there's pockets of them too. Like you'll notice like friend groups of girls that will all of a sudden decide that they're now trans.
The idea of LGBTQ being trending and the idea of teaching kids that being gay is a choice, those are two very
So
different
I'll answer that. Yes, I chose to be straight. Absolutely.
So
When?
you could,
Can you tell us about it?
so you
Did you
actually,
consider the
you
alternative?
could be attracted to me if you wanted to be.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And let me explain. I have seen transgendered people who I thought were born female that were very attractive. I didn't know. Now, once I find out that that's not what you are, I am choosing not to pursue that. That's what I mean. So yes, you can be attracted to someone that is of another gender.
Let's talk about
So
what do you
in backwards, he kind of answered his own question. You can choose to be straight. It's not like hypnosis, or they're dragging, or they're like doing some sort of like science, they're kidnapping people and like tampering with their brain, and then they're gay by force. Like, people can choose whatever they want to have relationship with. If you want to have a relationship with a man and you're a man, that's your choice. My choice is to be straight, to be married to my wife. Like, that's not such a hard thing to like figure out. Like, if he's saying it's his choice to be straight, and he thinks it's a choice for gay people to be gay, then what is the problem? I don't know.
you think should be taught about gender identity in school? What do you think is being taught?
I just want to I want to go back to something you were saying earlier that's related to this about like you're seeing trends, and I am too, right? Last semester, when I was teaching, I had a trans kid in every classroom, and I was like, whoa, when I started teaching,
It was one in school.
there was none,
Yeah,
right?
one
And
in
I'm
school,
like, this
yeah.
is, wow,
And they
okay?
were really for it, too.
And
they like went for it.
And I'm hearing you that is something I'm seeing too in the classrooms. Fair, okay. Now, I'm not gonna presume to be in the heads of those kids and to understand like what's real for them or whatever, but I will tell you this, historically speaking, a disproportionate number of kids who are gay, who are trans, who are any of the LGBTQI, fill in the letters, right? Didn't live to see adulthood. Maybe that's why we don't have an older generation of trans adults, because
I attended a funeral of a trans student last month.
a lot of them didn't make it. And so, but when I hear about kids like feeling comfortable enough to try expressing something where maybe they wouldn't be able to do in other spaces. And I understand that maybe that's not what you want for your kids, but I'm thinking about the most marginalized and vulnerable people. And unfortunately, statistically, for our queer youth, disproportionately they fall in that category.
Mind you, with the whole concept of school choice, I'm all for parents who agree with what you're teaching, sending their children to you. I just think ultimately it should be within the parent to make that choice.
What do you think?
Okay. Now, once again, if you guys want to watch that full video, if I can remember, I will post a link in the description so you guys can watch the whole video. It's like another 20-something minutes left. And, you know, I kind of want to let, you know, that channel kind of get their views. I kind of just want to do just a small portion of that conversation. But overall, my opinion is parents should be able to have the choice to either homeschool, private school, public school. I think it's the responsibility of the government to make sure that households have the ability to make their choices effective, highly effective. If parents want to homeschool, government can do it. Okay, the government is not doesn't have a shortage of money. We can have that conversation on the pointless of billions of dollars they give to billionaires to go into outer space. So if we are so concerned about educating our kids and making sure they have great education by any means necessary, we need to make sure parents should have a choice. But the government needs to make sure that these parents are adequate enough and have the resources to fulfill their choices. That simple. But of course, if you want to have this conversation, let me know down in the comments down below, and let's have that conversation.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to join the conversation by subscribing. Make sure to tune in next time, and like always, power to you, power to me, power to the people, power to the pod.